Well, for those of you that are new to our live stream service, my name is Ritonia, and I am the rector here at St. John's. And I'd just like you to know that wherever you are on your faith journey, it is my hope that St. John's is a place where you can belong, where you can believe, and where you can become the person that God created you to be. And if you are back after being away a while and have ever been hurt by the church, please accept my sincerest apologies. And I'm so grateful that you are giving the church a second chance this Easter day. You know, as I was thinking about our readings today, and actually the readings throughout Holy Week, there were some questions that came to mind for me, and this is going to take a little bit of audience participation. So the first question that I'd like you to consider, and you can raise your hand if you feel comfortable, those of you at home can do that as well. Do you have someone in your life that has to have the last word? All right, now the second question I think is a little harder, and you don't have to raise your hand on this one. Are you a person that has to have the last word? Well, I think we all know someone who has to have the last word. And sometimes those last words are not really the last, but they color every interaction going forward, even those ones that we add in our heads after somebody thinks they had the last word. And they can be very powerful because they often convey meaning beyond the actual words themselves. I don't trust you. What you think or feel doesn't matter. I'm more powerful than you are. Last words, whether spoken or unspoken, rarely tend to be words of love and grace. In fact, sometimes these words can cause small deaths over time that add up, sometimes even resulting in the end of a relationship. Well, on Good Friday, there were many players in God's Easter drama who thought that they had the last word. The chief priests and leaders of the temple, "We have no king but Caesar." Or Pilate, "What is truth?" Or the crowds who shouted, "Crucify him!" And the soldiers who taunt Jesus, and the bandits hanging beside him on the cross, saying, "Save yourself." And finally, Jesus himself, who says, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." And then his family and friends and disciples who witnessed those last words, who actually witnessed death, the real last word. And that took a toll on everyone that knew and loved Jesus. And then adding insult to injury, can you imagine Mary that morning running to the tomb, finding that there's no body there, running back to the disciples? And she too experienced another small death. Who was she now that Jesus was no longer with her? And I imagine her hurt at the reaction she got when she returned from the tomb to share Jesus was no longer there. Peter and the other disciples didn't take her at her word. They may even have said, "Oh, you're kidding. You're seeing things. We don't believe you." We need to see for ourselves. We saw him die. We know better than you. Death by 1,000 little paper cuts. And I think if we're honest, like Mary, all of us have experienced one of these little deaths at some time in our lives. Or maybe we've even been the source. Words have power, especially the last word. But the good news, friends, on this day is that death is not and will never be the final word. Because at the heart of Easter is the recognition that resurrection heralds not simply the defeat and end of death, this last word and the promise of life, but also that God is accessible to us, that God will not abandon us, and that God desires more than anything in the world to be in relationship with us, and that God continues, in fact, never stops, calling us by name, just as he did with Mary in the garden after the disciples left. And so on this day, friends, this Easter day, death is redeemed, because it is through death that Jesus revealed just how far God would go to restore us to right relationship with God and each other through sacrificial love. Through death and resurrection, love conquered death once and for all, to guarantee that nothing, that neither angels nor principalities or even death would ever separate us from the love of God. And through death and the waters of baptism, we rise again to experience Easter life, where the first and last words are always love. Make no mistake, though, to be Easter people takes intention, and it is only attainable with God's help. And the baptismal promises that we will renew in just a few minutes are a reminder that we can't do this work alone, which is why we have Christian community, to uphold one another, to walk with one another, to pray for one another when we can't do that ourselves. That's what love looks like. And so Easter summons us to trust no other truth than that what we have seen and what we have heard in the life of Jesus Christ is true, and that we can find meaning and purpose in lives of embodied faithfulness, in word and in deed, and with God's help, in love. And so, brothers and sisters, if you find yourself having to have the last word, let that word be love. Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.